The committee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to declare recess of the committee at any time. The title of this hearing is Examining the Dangers of the FSOC's Designation Process and Its Impact on the U.S. Financial System. I now recognize myself for 4 minutes to give an opening statement. The committee's hearing today is on the Financial Stability Oversight Council, which like most Washington bureaucracies, has come to be known by its acronym FSOC. FSOC was established, or so its supporters tell us, to make it easier for regulators to communicate and share information with each other. But the regulators did need an act of Congress to do that, and information sharing is not what FSOC is really all about. Instead, FSOC is about one thing: increasing Washington's control over the U.S. economy, thus curtailing both economic freedom and economic prosperity. And FSOC does this through its power to designate systemically important financial institutions, or in bureaucratic speak, SIFIs. Having failed to prevent the last financial crisis, notwithstanding having every regulatory power necessary to do so, regulators were rewarded with even more power by the Dodd-Frank Act. The Dodd-Frank Act represents a breathtaking outsourcing of legislative power to the executive branch. Federal agencies now have virtually unfettered discretion to expand their regulatory control through a designation process that is opaque, secretive, vague, open-ended, and highly subjective. And by empowering FSOC to designate SIFIs, Dodd-Frank allows the Federal Reserve to impose bank-like standards on non-bank institutions. In other words, to move institutions from the non-bailout economy to the bailout economy. And that's what FSOC is doing, expanding the Fed's power to control the financial system using the pretext that size alone poses a systemic risk. Rather than offering up detailed data and compelling analysis to justify its efforts to commandeer large financial institutions, FSOC's perfunctory explanations are typical of an unaccountable group of agencies that feel it needs not justify their actions to anyone. Many think it odd that FSOC has chosen insurance companies and asset managers as targets for SIFI designation, when there are others that clearly pose far greater risk to financial stability. Insurance companies are already heavily regulated at the state level, and asset managers operate with little leverage. And since they manage someone else's funds, it is almost inconceivable that an asset manager's failure could cause systemic risk. Now, in contrast, there were Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which lay at the epicenter of the financial crisis. They were highly leveraged before the crisis and remain highly leveraged today. They're not only a source of systemic risk, they are its very embodiment. Then there's the federal government itself. As I look at the national debt clock turned to my left and right, having borrowed upwards of $17 trillion, it is perhaps the most leveraged institution in world history. And like charity, perhaps SIFI designation should begin at home. Americans should also be worried that FSOC seems to take its direction from an international organization that meets secretly the Financial Stability Board. Though the U.S. is represented, and I use that word advisedly, on this international board by the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, neither the Treasury nor the Fed nor the SEC has ever reported to Congress about its participation, nor have they ever asked for Congress's approval to participate in the global organization. Now, while administration officials are fond of invoking the risks that supposedly lurk in the so-called shadow banking system, great risk also lurk to U.S. financial stability and competitiveness in a shadow regulatory system in which Treasury and the Federal Reserve may have ceded U.S. sovereignty over financial regulatory matters to a secretive, unaccountable coalition of European bureaucrats. Just days ago, in this very hearing room, Secretary Lew refused to answer key questions regarding Treasury's participation in the FSB designation process. To most Americans, the SIFI designation process may seem like a classic inside the beltway exercise, but the stakes are enormous. Designation anoints institutions too big to fail. Today's designations are tomorrow's taxpayer-funded bailouts. Americans may find themselves paying more to insure their homes and their families. Investors who relied on mutual funds to save for their children's education or their own retirement will find they have learned earned less and our economy will suffer as sources of long-term investment capital dry up. I once again call upon FSOC to cease and desist further SIFI designations until Congress can review the entire matter. I now yield 6 minutes to the ranking member for an opening statement.